Yeah, that run going for pole, qualifying that day, and backing it in the fence, it was a hard hit. Like, I was in outer space, and when the car smacked the right front, I don't remember that hit. And this vibration starts. And I'm like, what is going on? It's too early for the tire to be coming apart. It's too late for it to be a loose wheel from the pit crew. And then they announced Terry Gant, who's deserving. I'm like looking at Biffle like, oh boy, one of us is going home empty-handed here.
Welcome to another edition of Backstretch Banter here on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. Brad Gillie in once again for Chris Childers. We've got Mike Massaro co-hosting with us. And Mike, it is a very special week for Backstretch Banter because we have with us former Roush driver, the 2004 NASCAR Cup Series champion, and soon-to-be Hall of Famer, Kurt Busch. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's great to see you.
It's super exciting. As you said, Brad, extremely special to have Kurt come back here. He's been back here before, but this is the first time as a soon-to-be Hall of Famer. So congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. It's definitely something I couldn't have imagined just as a racer kid out of Vegas, to see it all come together like it has over the years. I mean, and to be first ballot, I do have to thank the panel and NASCAR and our media that I know who are on the panel. It's a wonderful cherry on top for the 23 years that I was blessed with in the Cup Series.
Well deserved, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm curious, standing there in the Hall of Fame, I mean, and what's so unique about the NASCAR Hall of Fame, unlike any other Halls of Fame out there, is that literally within a couple hours of voting, the announcement of the new inductees happened. You're there for the announcement. What was going on through your mind? Winston Kelly gets up there and, we start talking about what's going to happen. What's going on through your mind before and after you hear your name called?
Well, a couple years back, Wendy Belk was a PR girl. I was at Penske the years that I was there, and now she's one of the curators at the Hall. And she texted me, not quite out of the blue, because we worked together to put a driver's suit display. Currently at the Hall of Fame, there's 20 of my driver's suits, 10 helmets to kind of paint the 20 years in Cup. And she kind of gave me this wink of, you might want to show up on that day. There's no guarantees, though. It literally was like envelopes at the Oscars. And Commissioner Steve Phelps goes up there and opens up the envelope. And to hear Ray Hendrick, obviously Mr. Modified, get announced, that's who I voted for on the fan vote. And then, my buddy Biffle. Biffle was there with me. I mean, we had a blast running in the truck series back in the day. And he's a truck champion. He's an Xfinity champion. Almost the first guy ever to be the quad or the trifecta of being a Cup champion. He didn't quite get that. And he's there with me. And it's like, I thought it was going to be me and him. And then they announced Terry Gant, who's deserving. I'm like looking at Biffle like, oh boy. One of us is going home empty-handed here. And again, very blessed to have had the career that I've had and to work with all the race teams. And Biffle, it would have been fun, but I know he'll be in next year. He's so deserving of everything he's done to help NASCAR grow, and also the things he's done from his heart here recently in North Carolina. So it was definitely a fun night. And I brought friends, I brought family. We were just going to go have a nice steak dinner either way. Win, lose, or draw, we were going to have a nice dinner.
My guess is there was more than a steak dinner that night.
It was nice. It was great.
You kind of alluded to it in the beginning, but I wanted to get a sense for you, because I know you're a true historian, not only of motorsports, but of sports in general. I mean, you have an appreciation for Hall of Famers of all sorts. What does it mean to you to be put in that category of the elite group who are considered Hall of Famers?
What it means to me, and again, it's only been a couple months of being on the ballot and then being voted in, but it's to wear all the different hats that you have to wear as a professional athlete. It's telling me that I wore most of those hats fairly well. And that gets into the driving of the car. It gets into working with your team, understanding the engineering aspect, aerodynamics, the sponsors and the appearances, the fans and having their support and supporting them, going around and traveling and being able to do it in a fashion to where it feels like it's not work, that it's fun. And then you have an impact on the sport that you leave behind. And that's where, with my accident in Pocono, I took it as a positive to leave my fingerprints with 2311 and with that 45 car, because I was pretty much done heading into the final years at Ganassi. And when you get a call from Monster Energy, and you get a call from Toyota, and you get a call from this guy named Michael Jordan.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, you want me to start up a new team? Absolutely, I'm in. And so that's where you leave that lasting legacy on the sport. And at the end of the day, I kind of did it my way.
No question.
And that's where I've learned that it fits with a lot of different top athletes in their sport, like a Ray Lewis in football, or Wayne Gretzky in hockey, or Magic Johnson in the NBA. He's more famous now in my mind as a team owner and as a developer in sports. And those are the things that are influencing me as I continue on my journey.
It's fascinating talking about your career and even things surrounding the Hall of Fame. One thing that's said about Kurt Busch is everywhere you went, you made them better. And you started your career at Roush in the trucks, and I think you might have been the first guy who went straight to Cup, but obviously you made Roush better. You won a championship. You go to Team Penske, you do everything over there, including pro stock drag racing. You mentioned Ganassi, different things you did there. James Finch, heck, you almost won at Sonoma Raceway. Front Row Motorsports, probably coulda, woulda, shoulda won a Coca-Cola 600 had it not been for a cable camera falling down. On into 2311 Racing and winning in the 45. Stuart Haas Racing. It's amazing. But when we say everywhere Kurt Busch went, he made better, what do you say to that?
Well, I appreciate that. It's a compliment. It also has so many, like what you would call fingers or detours or different avenues that I had to go down. And, when I won the championship at Roush, I was already talking with Penske, because Penske recognized me in the IROC series when I won the championship there in 2003. So I was an IROC champion before I was a NASCAR champion. And that, when Penske's knocking on my door without a Cup championship, telling me Rusty Wallace is going to be retiring in a couple of years, wow. Here we go. Like I haven't even really got settled, or haven't even really built a foundation in Cup. And so that's where some of that transition changed things. And, when I got to Penske, we were a bit behind. Ryan Newman and Rusty Wallace, they loved to travel the cars, what we would call max travel. And yet they didn't know anything about coil binding in the suspension setup. Well, at Roush, between Mark Martin, Jeff Burton, Kenseth, myself, Biffle, we really crafted the coil binding era and changed the game in the early 2000s, because we had that much talent behind the wheel and we had that much talent in the shop building these cars and finding that technology. And so that's when it was more of an arms race back in the day, right? Like, it was hire the best driver, we've got the cars, we've got the sponsors. And so it was a good run, but Penske wanted me in his cars, and then I got there and we were like 2.5 years behind. So that was some of the struggle of my time at Penske. And then the car tomorrow really took us for a loop. And so it took about 4 years really to get settled at Penske. So that's where I felt like I was getting behind on things. And that's when this guy named Jimmy Johnson went on a run of 5 championships. And I'm like, just give me a year, I'll catch back up, buddy.
You did okay for yourself, for sure. A couple of things I want to unpack there from your move over to Penske. Obviously, you mentioned the coil bonding. I remember when coil bonding, Brad, I'm sure you do as well, how the teams that knew how to do it were the dominant teams of the era. So I get that was information that, eventually flowed throughout the series. But one thing that you said was going to Penske, following in the footsteps of another Hall of Famer, Rusty Wallace. You were obviously a proven driver, but Rusty Wallace was an icon of the sport at that time. What was that like, moving into that role?
I remember the first time, even as a champion, putting that Miller Lite suit on and going out for practice in Daytona. I'm like, this comes with another set of responsibilities. Like the iconic blue chip brand company, Miller Coors, Miller. It was really a unique powerful sponsorship. I'm not saying that Sharpie, Newell Rubbermaid, and all the sponsors that we had at Roush weren't as important, but it was that Rusty Wallace era, and picking up those race fans, that definitely felt like another set of responsibilities.
Following in the footsteps of a legend cannot be easy.
No, they're always big shoes to fill. And over the years, back to helping teams develop and get better along the way, some of it was me choosing to reset. That's why I ran the NHRA Pro Stock car in 2011. I was trying to find, am I really going to be in Cup for the rest of my career? It gave me this thing of man, I want to run Indy. I want to try it out. Maybe I'm an IndyCar guy. Maybe I'm a drag race guy. Maybe I'm a sports car guy. I don't know. And so I was trying to find my way in that early 2010s. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? You better put your boots on, strap them up tight. You're a NASCAR guy. Go back out there. And so that's when I went on my journey with James Finch at Phoenix Racing, Barney Visser at Furniture Row, and the phone rang to race for Stuart Haas. That's where I thought things would end up. And then it was like Monster Energy and myself were like, well, the Ganassi thing over there is looking pretty good. Let's go over there and win. And so there's a balance of I wanted to go places and Monster Energy wanted to go places. That's why I was with so many different teams in the latter part of my career.
All right, you're a baseball fan, so in the Baseball Hall of Fame, the player that's inducted needs to wear a hat, right? They need to wear the right hat. It doesn't matter how many teams they played for. They have to choose a hat. If you had to choose a hat, which one would you wear in your Hall of Fame?
Well, the hat is on my head.
You won the championship with RFK, with Roush,
yes.
right?
Yeah, so the hat is on my head, but the number, that's still in question. And if you really just put a quick punctuation point behind it, the number 97 to me is where my core group of fans followed me throughout my career, and that's where it started.
It is awesome. We want to talk more about your career because there's so many things to highlight as well. We also want to talk about some current events. RFK coming off a pretty good weekend at Pocono Raceway with every car in the top 8, top 9, which was a pretty awesome thing to see. And, man, we got so many things to cover. Brad Gillie along with Mike Massaro. We have Kurt Busch this week on Backstretch Banter. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter, where we talk all things RFK here on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Brad Gillie along with Mike Massaro, joined by Hall of Famer and 2004 champion Kurt Busch. Coming off a big weekend at Pocono Raceway that saw all of the RFK drivers finish in the top 9. Chris Buescher from the outside pole finished 4th. We had Brad Keselowski with the 9th place finish. Ryan Preece continuing to do some pretty great things as well, and he finished 8th. But Kurt, the race day started with you, sir. How was your visit to Pocono?
It was fun. Beast, Monster Energy's alcohol brand, was activating huge in the infield. And if you guys haven't been to Pocono in a few years, the infield crowd, the families, the whole atmosphere there, it's incredible. The main reason is because there's really no good hotels within a couple hours. I mean, sorry, Kalahari. You got a good place across the street there with the water park. But everyone camps out, has fun, and it was nice to not have big-time duties on Sunday. And I cruised around on the golf cart Saturday night and saw a lot of different campgrounds and gave away some Beast alcohol drink with Monster Energy.
Yeah, the campground atmosphere is big in Pocono, although I like the Split Rock Resort. I've been there. It's pretty nice, too.
Right.
But what did it mean to you to go back to that place? I mean, it's a significant racetrack in your life.
Yeah, Nick Adolski, track president, the Manioli family, asked me back in Daytona if I would come out to their track this summer, and I said yes, it's time. And yeah, that run going for pole, qualifying that day, and backing it in the fence, it was a hard hit. I was in outer space, and when the car smacked the right front, I don't remember that hit. And part of protocol with the infield care center is a ton of tests that you have to go through, and one of them is explain your wreck. And I never really knew that they were actually analyzing what I was saying if I wrecked a car with the right front with a tire blowout or this wreck and that wreck. And I said, I was just going for pole. I backed it in the fence. What's the big deal? And they're like, what about your right front? I'm like, what about the right front? Go in the garage and look at it. It's fine. That's when we all started to learn that I was a bit off. And to go there this summer, it was nice to just kind of close it out, to purge, to show honor to the track. The track, it's not at fault. the safety of the car is not at fault. It's just accidents happen. And, for me to go back there, it's like, you know what? Things happen for a reason, and my life has changed since then, but you take it for what you can to find positives and to be a mentor and to help out with 2311 and to coach Bubba and Tyler Reddick and Riley Herbst, to give my information from 20 years of racing to a race team, and to do it alongside a future Hall of Famer like Denny Hamlin. I felt like I found that purpose after the accident and then the year afterwards. And then now I just kind of step back. Like I'm 30,000-foot view on things going on with the race team, but still having fun with Monster Energy, doing different appearances and traveling the world a little bit.
That is really cool. How are you today? You still feeling the effects? Do you still have to do any kind of therapy, exercises, or anything like that?
I still keep up with a normal regimen of workouts and things like cardio, a lot of vestibular movements that I learned from the rehab to help twist and turn. But no, I'm cleared to go. It's just like, what do I really want to get into? And some of it's just fun overseas. I'll be at the World Rally Championship in Finland coming up this summer. Not as a racer, but maybe a co-driver on a reconnaissance run, maybe Baja 1000, doing a reconnaissance run down there. We'll see. I'm just enjoying motorsports at an easier pace.
Is there the possibility of getting behind the wheel again?
There is. Like, there's different opportunities that are popping up. There's even the fun stuff. Like I watched Jimmy Johnson doing some of the Goodwood Festival. There's different historical races around the globe. I went to Monaco a couple of years ago to look at things, see what's going on. Maybe I can get in a historics race at Côte d'Azur in Monaco. It's fulfilling different things that I've had on my bucket list, maybe even Nürburgring or the Bathurst 1000, because I was on the grind. I was on the NASCAR circuit, call it 25 years straight, and racing for 40 weeks a year. The first thing you wanted to do at the end of a NASCAR season was just hang out on the beach somewhere and chill. So it's fun now to kind of get the racing juices flowing, but not really have a specific plan right now.
So I find it fascinating. On the Nürburgring, you could literally pay your admission and go drive the thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all right. So if Kurt Busch, and you've driven many, many cars. You talked about IndyCar, obviously the pro stock car. I don't think you'd want to take that on the Nürburgring. A cup car or something, if you were going to take something on there, what would you like to drive?
Well, I would start with a street car. I mean, Edsel Ford was very kind to me. When I won the championship, he gave me a Ford GT. I think that would be the best nostalgic car to go around that racetrack and kind of learn some of the corners, but you got to start on a simulator. You cannot just show up there. You got to really try to memorize the length of the course, 13 kilometers or something like that. Like it's a unique place in the world, and that would be fun just to go do as a fan.
That would be amazing. There's great YouTube videos, by the way, of people who stand in certain corners, which are a little more exciting. We don't want to see you have too much excitement.
No, we're not allowed to have a yard sale out.
Especially not with the Ford GT.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty amazing thing. How often have you been, or is this like one of the first times you've been back on the campus at RFK, and what have you experienced?
I've been back here a couple times, especially with Brad taking over. I really admired Brad's work. It's just like Denny Hamlin with 2311. You know them as a racer. I know them as a racer and know them as a competitor. And as a businessman, it's unique to see them working as hard as they are. And it does take that extra responsibility. And they're both great family men as a father and as a husband. And so the responsibilities that they're taking on is pretty neat. And to be part of the history here at RFK, I mean, I had 5 years in Cup and 1 year in Truck, but guys like Mark Martin are the ones that made this place. Guys like Greg Biffle stayed to the bitter end, those are the guys. I mean, but we can go back to Roush's sports car days with Tommy Kendall and go back to the Roush Gap Pro Stock days in drag racing. I mean, Roush is an incredible man, and it was an honor to race for him for half a decade.
And it was an incredible journey for you as well. I mean, you came from, I think, legend cars. You were a young driver who had a lot of potential, was recognized by people like Jack Roush. You auditioned through the Gong Show and what have you to get a ride. But what was it like walking through these doors, being anointed as a driver amongst guys like Mark Martin and Jeff Burton and Matt Kenseth and, of course, Jack Roush. I mean, it had to be a pretty, I would imagine, intimidating process for somebody who was coming into these doors for the first time.
All right, bridging off of your question, think of it this way. In 1994, I ran my first ever legend car race. First ever race. Like, I didn't race go-karts. We didn't have extra money other than my dad's street stock car that he raced. And so with a legend car, that's how I got my start. 1994. September of 2000, I'm in a cup car.
6 years later.
6 years.
Legend car to cup car.
Yes. And in the summer of 1999 was about my last legend car race. The next September, I'm in a cup car. That's how fast it was. It was like 2 years in a legend car, 1 year in an IMCA modified that we pieced together out of the junkyard. I got a huge break with the Star Nursery team in Las Vegas to run their Southwest Tour car. Ran that for 2 years, and that's how I got recognized to get picked to the Gong Show to drive the truck. So 2 years legend car, 2 years late model, boom, in a truck. And in half a year in truck, Jack came to me. This is before I won Milwaukee in 2000 in the trucks. Biffle had won 10 races the years before, and he was leading the championship in 2000. And Jack goes, "Hey, you want to go cup racing?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we'll go cup racing in a couple of years, trucks, Busch Series back then." He goes, "No, I want to put you in a cup car, Dover, September." I'm like, "Biffle's over there probably better ready than I am." He goes, "No, we're going to cup." I'm like, "All right, cool. We're going to wreck some shit, but here we go." Jack wanted me in cup because he said he wanted me to make my mistakes in cup versus trucks and the Busch Series back then. That's how fast it went. That's why I was so brash and so unpolished. Had no idea what it was like to be a professional race car driver. That's why my interviews were all over the place, and I was in so much trouble all the time. And I was just nervous that if I didn't perform, I was going to get kicked out and never have that top team caliper opportunity ever again.
In hindsight, would you have preferred it to go slower?
I guess I should say no. I just needed to. I mean, I'm 22 years old. I just got my first apartment barely in Las Vegas, and here we go to race cup. I mean, it was fun to make those mistakes, but it was hard being under the microscope. I didn't have thick skin then. I didn't have much guidance, and it was definitely tough. But at the end of the day, it made me who I was, or
A
who
Hall
I
of
am.
Famer.
Thank you.
Good point. Were there any tipping point moments, when you start to talk about your development and really the honing you into the champion you became, whether it was a conversation, an on-track incident, something like that? Are there any things that come to mind that sort of kind of help correct your course along the way?
Yeah, there's a couple big positive moments and a couple big negative ones. My rookie year in Cup, 2001, I was 27th in points. We had flashes in the pan, like I was top 5 at Texas Motor Speedway my first time there. Finished 3rd at Talladega my first time. 5th at Indianapolis as a rookie. Like, all right, cool. Well, we ran out of provisionals by the end of the year, and we had to qualify at Atlanta in November by time, and I wasn't fast enough. I have 1 DNQ on my stat book, and that was devastating. I literally jumped in my rent-a-car and drove home to Charlotte. I just left the team. I was supposed to fly home on the team plane, and I was just devastated. And I thought I was going to get fired because I'd left the racetrack, but I knew we missed the race. I'm at home. Didn't really hear much the next couple weeks. We ended up going back to New Hampshire to race the makeup race from September 11th. If everyone remembers 9/11, we had to go back to New Hampshire, ran that race, and the team never talked to me. I was this outcast. Like, I thought I was going to get fired. And I got this call from Roush about a week later. "Hey, we changed your crew chief." I'm like, nobody asked me. Okay, I guess this is better than getting fired. And it was the change where I got Jimmy Fenning and Mark Martin's crew. Mark Martin wanted my crew chief, Ben Leslie, and our cars. And so it's basically a swap of the 97 and the 6 car stuff. And when we started 2002, it was gangbusters. We were off and running. And that's when I won my first race at Bristol, was March of 2002. So it happened that fast. I thought I was getting fired in December, and then we were winning in March of 2002.
It was magic. There's no question that the chemistry that you and Jimmy had together as crew chief and driver. But to me, even in hindsight, it looks like you were the odd couple, right? He was an older veteran.
No, I needed it. He was a father figure.
So I was going to ask, what was that like? How did that work?
I needed that. Ben Leslie was my age. He was in his 20s. We're both young. We're both gunslingers. Of course, I trusted him and his ability to set up the cars. But I felt like Jimmy Fenning sat me down like father and son. This is the way we're going to do it. Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. I just followed his lead. And that helped me find that footing and that foundation in the sport. And when you win, and I think it's like my 50th start or something like that, it's like, all right, I'm going to make it here. And then in 2002, we won like 3 of the final 5 races. 2003, my head started getting a little too big, and we either won, finished second, or we crashed. And that's when Fenning had to put his arms around me, really, again, as a father figure. On, kid, you've got this. Just calm down. Just follow my lead on pit strategy. Just thank the crew, no matter if they have a bad pit stop. He was smoothing out all the rough edges. And in 2004, that's when everything came together perfectly.
Wow, that's incredible. And we can talk about that championship day, probably one of the most wild races and paths to a championship that I think people had seen. We also have Atlanta Motor Speedway coming up this weekend when we start talking about current events in Atlanta that has certainly changed since you've been out there and doing what you did there, Kurt, and a bracket challenge. So all of that and more coming up as Backstretch Banter continues right after this. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter here on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. Brad Gillie sitting in for Chris Childers. We've got Mike Massaro co-hosting, and we have 2004 champion Kurt Busch. And this weekend, when we talk about current events, we're headed to Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is actually going to be the 8th race with the next-gen car on what is the new Atlanta Motor Speedway. We have a bracket challenge. We have all kinds of things. And Kurt, I guess we'll just start with you. You've driven Atlanta so much in your career and had great success in Atlanta as well. What do you think about the new 28 degrees of banking and the way this track has been racing?
It was a game changer. When they repaved it, number one, and then when they added the banking, Goodyear, at the end of the day, they said that the tire that they have to build for durability, because the heavy loads of these stock cars on a mile and a half like that, they said we need to restrict the speeds. That's really why there's a restrictor plate there, is because the tire was going to be almost impossible to make that would have grip as well as the durability. And so I got to race it one time. It literally is like throwing those marbles in a funnel and just watching them spin to the bottom. Like everything happens so fast because it's Daytona and Talladega with a mile subtracted from it. I mean, things just move so quick. And I like the concept. I mean, and then with it being an in-season bracket challenge, this is what you call a bracket buster, first round. So I would hate for everyone to have their brackets busted, but that's possible with it being at Atlanta like this.
So it's taken a while for people to adapt, drivers to adapt, I would imagine, to this style of racing at Atlanta. What do you think it's like right now? I mean, you look at it, and visually, it looks a lot like a super speedway in terms of drafting and what have you. But what is the mindset of a driver going to that place and throughout the day at Atlanta?
Well, with data now to go back and see when wrecks happen, there's a lot of data that will show those bell curves. Like lap 14 might be a caution point. Those are the data points that I would look for to be on my toes even stronger. Like you're just looking up the whole time to making sure you don't see smoke or see a problem happening ahead. Is the low lane the place to be on older tires, or high lane after a pit stop? There's tons of data now for all that. But restrictor plate racing is a lot of, you're just clicking off laps, trying to save fuel, and to make sure your last pit stop, you spend the least amount of time on pit road. There's just a lot of data on just checking off the boxes on what it takes to get to the front at the end of those races.
Is the mindset very much like a Daytona or a Talladega, where you're trying to find the guy to go with and trying to find which lane to be in and that kind of thing, the politics of the draft, if you will?
Yep, it's a lot of that. When the manufacturers stepped in and said, I want all blue ovals to work together, I want all bow ties to work together, you'll see that. And that's just part of the game. I mean, you respect your team first, manufacturer second. Thirdly, you do have your allies that you trust when you're at a restrictor plate track. Like me and my brother, we drafted really well at the end of my career and where he is now because we trusted each other in that way. And at the end of the day, you get about 5 to go, and you've built your call it sandcastle. You hope that nobody blows it over or steps on it, and then you can leave others behind. You just go for it at the end of the day.
I like the way you phrase the politics of the field. All right, so this in-season bracket challenge, I want to have some fun with the RFK drivers and see what we think. Just for the quick version of it, everyone's still running for championship points, just like they do every other week. It's just for the next 5 weeks. 32 drivers of the 36 charter teams are seeded, and those brackets are going to go down to one winner at the end of the Brickyard 400, and they're going to win $1 million. So let's look at the RFK drivers. Chris Buescher is seated up against Todd Gilliland at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is Ford versus Ford. So what does Chris Buescher have to do to beat Todd Gilliland, Kurt?
Just dump him on the pace laps.
This is Ford versus Ford.
Well, that's a tough matchup because, again, it's Ford versus Ford. It's in a restrictor plate environment. I look at that as 50-50. That one's too tough to call.
All right, Ryan Preece and two-time New Atlanta winner and points leader, William Byron.
Aha. So this is where you have a race winner versus a non-race winner. So William Byron, he's all worried about this. I think he would be worried about getting through this first round and making a move on track or a pit strategy call so that he can advance. That when you have, call it the rich get richer, the healthier get healthier, when you're on top, you have more options. So it's going to be a tough call for Preece.
Yeah, if this was the NCAA tournament, it would be you're looking for a Cinderella to upset a top seed. So, but Ryan's been having a heck of a year. Who knows?
Yeah, he has.
And the Fords are strong at these plate races.
Yeah, they are. Very true. All right, well, let's speak of another Ford at RFK.
This is the interesting one right here.
Okay, you ready? Brad Keselowski versus Kyle Busch.
Oh, that one's too tough to call because both are having those types of seasons that you want to turn it around as quick as possible. And Atlanta's a track that is equal opportunity for A-level teams, B-level, C-level teams. And those are A-level teams, A-level drivers that want to turn something around. I mean, Kyle almost won this race last spring, right, with the 3-wide finish. Brad is a master at plate racing, and, I think he has allies within the Penske system, which are other Fords. And then my little brother with the Chevys. I mean, that's where I would tuck in with the Hendrick guys if I was him and just try to make his way through it. But, of course, he can count on Austin Dillon to help him as well.
And, of course, there's always great theater. It always seems Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski are mixing it up somewhere.
That must be just the old guys with so many laps on the track. They know
they
do the same
part,
thing.
Right?
They do the same thing because they have the same tendencies.
But here's what I wonder. Okay, so let's say Kyle and Brad hook up at some point, and they're able to draft well together. Look, at a certain point, you're going to want to dump the other guy anyway. Maybe not dump him into the fence, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe send him to the back if you can because you want to advance your position. But isn't this the way NASCAR works out, that it might actually be the two drivers or two of the drivers toward the end who are actually going head-to-head in the bracket challenge as well, and what choices they make?
I mean, as a fan, I like it. I like this in-season challenge. As a driver, I almost put the blinders on. If they put me up against William Byron round one, or if they put me up against Corey LaJoie, I would almost ignore it as a racer. I would just go do my job.
It's interesting to me because I think about what it's like in the playoffs, especially when you come down to the final race. I mean, they're all racing each other to a degree. They want to know where each other is on the racetrack at all times. I'm wondering if that will be, for some drivers out there, the case. Will they want to know where the other driver is?
Once it gets to the Final Four or the Elite Eight. So this first week at Atlanta, let's say it was the old Atlanta. I'm all about beating the guy that's in my bracket because we're out there driving where it's handling, sliding sideways. Like I won the last Atlanta race on the old asphalt. That to me is the old school quintessential Atlanta. This being a plate race, if I make it through, I make it through. So it's just a tough mindset. But once you get towards the finals, it's just like the playoffs. You end up looking at your competition to advance out of the Elite Eight and to get to that Final Four. They will be looking at each other.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool Atlanta win, by the way. That was a pretty awesome day. We got 9 races to go until the postseason begins also, and we just had another new winner. In fact, we've had like 6 new winners in the last 8 races, new to the season winners, with what we had seen this past weekend at Pocono Raceway. So what do you think? 11 is the number right now. If you had to look at the field, Kurt, is there anyone else out there you're looking at saying that they got a good shot? They're probably going to win their way through.
I mean, come on, Chase Elliott hasn't won yet. Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace has been knocking on the door. He's had a very consistent year. And it always ends up being 14, 15 winners, right? So I think you're going to see 3 to 4 more new guys that haven't won a race yet this year.
That's incredible. All right, let's come back. Let's talk about some things happening today in NASCAR. Let's talk about some things that have happened with Kurt's career and much more as RFK's Backstretch Banter continues right after this. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter here on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90 as we celebrate all things RFK. And, of course, we are celebrating a former driver there from that shop in Concord, North Carolina, 2004 champion, Kurt Busch. And Kurt, you talked about this earlier. You ran the bull ring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Growing up, running Legends cars, working on your own cars, a lot of the skill set that you have developed. Now another generation of Busch is out there racing Legends cars. Your nephew Brexton, and I have to know because I spent a lot of time with Legends cars here in Texas. What's it like watching him now graduate into this series?
It's incredible. I mean, he's only 10. And he's got so many laps under his belt with all the dirt racing, the Bandoleros. He has more laps as a 10-year-old than I had before I got the Cup. Like, his racer craft is what I'm so happy to see developing so quickly. Yeah, he's had a couple of fender benders here or there, but yet the way he's making passes and approaching his, literally pulling up the telemetry and showing me throttle trace and brake trace. As a 10-year-old, it's amazing. And I was there. I was at Hickory Motor Speedway for his first Legends race. 35 cars showed up. I knew that there was Young Lions, Semi-Pro, Pro, and Masters. Now a 10-year-old is in a division called Chargers. I'm like, okay, cool. He'll be out there with the Young Lions, right? Anybody under 16? Nope. He's out there with the adults, with the pros, the Masters. Like, there's 35 cars that showed up, and he qualifies 16th. Out of all the people that are there, made the A main, started 16th, passed for 15th, got passed back, finished 16th. Not a scratch on it. Racing the adults at his first time in a Legend car at a 3/8 mile. I'm like, wow, 10 years old, here we go. Like, he has got it. He's got that racer craft, and I'm just so proud of him as well because he's great with the camera. He's great with social media and the way that when fans approach him, he's signing autographs and taking pictures. Frankly, Kyle and I were very shy, and we didn't like the camera, and we just wanted to work on our cars. Brexton's got it all. I'm very proud of him.
Do you think he realizes who he's getting information from? You know, a guaranteed Hall of Famer and probably a future Hall of Famer as well. I mean, that's pretty impressive, I would think.
I mean, in the flip side of this, I got to go to Phoenix International Raceway when I was 16 to just watch my first ever Cup race as a fan sitting in the Turn 1 grandstands. Brexton's on pit road at Daytona as a 6-year-old. Now he's digesting it as a 10-year-old. He sees the stardom. He sees the things that Kyle's done on track, and he can watch the things that I used to do on track, you know, on film. He gets it. He sees it, and some kids get shy about it, but for him, he just keeps going like it's normal everyday life. We're traveling, we're racing, and it's great because he has fans that come up to him. They're 10 years old.
I bet he does.
He's got 10-year-old fans going, "Hey, can you sign my shirt?" It's great. He's going to have such a long career at this because he's got so many boxes already checked.
And at the same time, he's a normal 10-year-old. I've seen some videos where he's just out hanging out with his buddies at the racetrack, and it doesn't seem like, you know, that the fact that he's kind of a star himself is even affecting him a little bit.
He loves fishing. Like he would love to get on his little kayak and just go out there and fish with a couple of the adult buddies that help with his fishing lines and with some of the ins and outs of fishing. Like he's got his hobbies outside of the racing, and that's important.
It is.
Yeah, that is really cool. All right, let's talk about some of your bigger wins. You know, for the longest time in your career, Kurt, we talked about you as hands down the best plate racer who had never won a plate race. And I mean, like, you know, if you weren't wrecking like everyone does, you were finishing like up in the top 2 or top 3. You know, famously pushed Ryan Newman to a win in the Daytona 500. But then you get to Stewart-Haas Racing, and in 2017, you finally get to hoist that Harley J. Earl Trophy up. What was that like?
Well, let me tell a couple stories that led into that. I finished third my first ever time at Talladega. I was a rookie. It was my first Sharpie ever sponsored race. And I was just sitting there on the inside lane, just minding my own business, and Bill Elliott go driving by. I'm like, okay, all right. Dale Jarrett goes driving by. All right, I'm just going to hang out right here. I can't remember who I followed. But it was like those guys would get cycled back behind, and I wasn't going to make a move. I'm running third. I'm just going to hang out here and cash these chips. Got third. Over time, you know, there'd be the second place finish. I had 3 second place finishes at the Daytona 500. Got a bunch of top 5s at Talladega, bunch of top 5s, top 10s in the summer race at Daytona, Talladega in the fall. My main story there was, this is 2007. I'm having a really good year, and Jimmy Johnson's running 6th. I'm running 7th. Sorry, this is 2009. 2009, I was in Penske, Miller Lite Dodge. I'm running right behind Jimmy Johnson. It's like halfway through the playoffs. I'm only down by like, call it 20 points, which is like 5 positions in the old system. And here comes Brad Keselowski around the outside, and he's in the Mukasuki car that had won previously. I'm like, oh, man, Brad, I'm going to go and just jump in front of him, use him. He's going to push me to the win, and I'm going to finally win a restrictor plate race, and that's going to help us in the points in the playoffs. Get in front of Brad, poof, poof, inside fence that fast. Done. And I lost in what would be the equivalent in today's system, 30 points. I ended up finishing 4th in points that year, 27 points or something in the new math behind Jimmy Johnson. That one decision to jump out and try to win a restrictor plate race for my first ever time backfired, and it took a championship run away. That then put this mindset in, like, just a plate win will happen when it happens, but don't hurt your playoff chances going for it. So that's why it took so long to win a plate race. And that's where 2017 Daytona 500 was like the perfect storm. And what I mean by that is at Stewart-Haas, we were a Chevy team, and we were switching to Ford. And I was sitting there just like, as soon as I heard the news, hey, Doug Yates, how's it going? Looks like we're going to be teammates again. You know what kind of steam that I'm hoping for Daytona. Obviously, Doug builds quality engines for all the Ford teams. They're all within 1 or 2 horsepower, so there's nothing special there. But it felt special in my heart that we were switching to Ford. And I had Tony Gibson, who had won restrictor plate races with Jeff Gordon and with Dale Jr. He was my crew chief. I looked at him, and I'm like, we're doing this. And that was like back in October, leading into that February race. That is how much I just wished it to happen. I manifested it to happen. I really pushed and focused. And our qualifying race, we weren't that fast. And I looked at Gibson, and I go, do you think that we're that good? He goes, no, we're not that good. And we both agreed, like, we got to go to work. We polished on that car as best we could. We might have been one of the first teams with an alternator switch where we could shut the alternator off and gain like 2 horsepower. But you risk the battery going dead and the car shutting off. It was just a perfect storm at the end of that race because it turned into an old school. This is the 2017 Daytona 500. It turned into an old school fuel mileage race. We all pitted at the end. It was about 50 to go, and we could go 48 laps on a tank. Tony Gibson said right away, we got it as full as we can get it. You know what to do now. What that meant was we don't need to lead. We don't need to tow the field around and burn up fuel. And I just sat there and rode. I wanted to be in third. That was my magic number. And I believed in it because that's where I was when I finished at Talladega, my first ever restrictor plate race. And that meant I was close enough to the front, but not burning all my fuel. And towards the end of the race, there goes Chase Elliott. He's going for the lead. Oops, he's out of gas. Truex, he goes up for the lead. He's out of gas. And I was just sitting there riding. I'm just waiting for my one move. And it all worked out perfect to pass Kyle Larson on the last lap going into turn 1. And when the pack broke apart, it was like my car just lunged forward and the rest of them got stuck side by side for a little bit. And I was clear by 5 car lengths when I made that move. And when the spotter said, you're clear by 5, and I was on the middle of the back straightaway, that's when I knew I had it. And I came off turn 4 and it was black and white everywhere. Like I remember it so vividly. There was no colors, no nothing. It was just black and white, and I just saw the flash bulbs going off, and I was like, "Yeah, we made this happen, and we made this happen for a long time."
It's amazing the details you remember of these marquee wins. And Brad, you mentioned that one as one of the stepping stones to the Hall of Fame. The one that stands out to me came much earlier in Kurt's career. It goes back to Homestead in 2004, the championship race. That had some challenges to overcome before getting to hoist the trophy there. I think about the loose wheel, the wheel that came off.
The wheel that broke.
That broke.
It broke,
it seemed to me, and that was relatively early in the race, it seemed like that there was no chance of winning the championship that day, but lo and behold, you overcame that and won the title. But, I mean, you remember the details of Daytona. I'm sure that day stands out for you as well.
Yeah, the way that the vibration started. So this is early in the race. It must have been after the first pit stop, so it's a second set of wheels. And you know right away when you take the green if you have a loose wheel from the pit crew, if a couple too many lug nuts are loose. A lot of times we would race with 3 lug nuts tight, right? And you just hope that vibration stays the same. So everything's fine, no vibration. We're racing. I think I'm running top 5 and just doing what we need to do to stay up front and to stay in the hunt. And this vibration starts. And I'm like, what is going on? It's too early for the tire to be coming apart. It's too late for it to be a loose wheel from the pit crew. Vibration's getting worse. And it's everywhere. It's in the corner. Sometimes when it's in the corner, that's a different vibration, and then it goes away on the straightaway. Well, if it's in the corner, that means the tire's coming apart. It's everywhere, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, all right, you know what, Kurt? This is where you have like the 2 egos on your shoulders going, oh, no, go for it. No, you better pit. I actually thought I was folding under pressure. I thought that I wasn't ready for that moment of running up front for a championship and that I was making this loose wheel more than what it was, or this problem, this vibration. I'm like, no, there's something wrong. Like literally you're having a conversation with yourself as you're running 175 miles an hour around the track. I'm like, you know what, just pit now. It's early enough in the race and we'll work our way back up. I dive down in turn 3 and you got to be on the apron at Homestead on the access road. So it's flat down there. And I got in there so hot, I'm like full lock left. Now I might end up in the grass and spin and it's just going to be a disaster and overthinking everything. Now it's like, all right, get the car slowed for pit road speed. And I just get it into second gear for pit road speed, and that wheel comes off. It breaks. The center section is still attached to the hub. The outer section is still inflated with the rubber tire.
Wow.
That goes out on the track to create the yellow. Now I'm looking right at the end of pit road, the wall, the barriers. You've driven on snow, Mike, right?
I have.
Up in the Northeast.
Yeah,
and
I wasn't always successful like you were in that day, but yes.
So if you're full lock left and you're heading straight and your foot's on the brake, my nose started to tingle like I was done. Like everything goes into slow-mo right before you wreck. Nose tingles, and it's like my day's done. Something told me to take my left foot off of the brake pedal so that the left front could get a little traction and turn and just get to the inside of that barrier. And I learned it from hanging out up northeast with Zipadelli going snowmobiling and being goofy with rent-a-cars in the snow. That helped me. I honestly believe that. And I got onto pit lane. I wasn't speeding. The tire is out there creating a yellow. And then we're in our pit box all like, what's going on? None of us knew what was going on. We were all just completely confused. Ended up staying on the lead lap and had to start in the back because we just changed right sides at that point on that pit stop, and then came back around, changed left sides, and just reset the day. And so we had to just work our way back up from the back. And I remember a key moment late in the race, and Jimmy Fenning will have to back this up. The way I remember it, Fenning says if we pit now, we're still short on fuel to the end. And I said, well, I'm running right behind Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, who were racing in points. I said, if they pit, I'm pitting. He goes, well, we're all going to run out of gas together. I said, well, we're either all going to run out of gas together or we're all going to come up to the top 5 and finish up front because we're pitting now. And all of us pitted, and it was just, all what I did the rest of the day was just follow them through the pack. Jimmy Johnson finished 2nd. Jeff Gordon was 3rd. I was 5th, and we had enough points to beat him.
And the rest, as they say, Brad, is history.
That is incredible. And as Mike said, that's just one part of your career. Pretty big one, by the way, why you're going into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And Mike, make sure I don't miss anybody, but you get to join other Roush members, including Jack Roush himself, Matt Kenseth, Mark Martin, Carl Edwards, and Kurt Busch going in there as well. Did I get them all, Mike?
I think you did. And I think, to me, it just proves that this organization has a blue chip pedigree. I mean, it's certain, there's very few other teams, and there are others, but there are few that have that many Hall of Famers.
It's amazing just to even think about that group that just got mentioned, the pioneers that helped Roush in the early days. I mean, Mark Martin's name, of course, will be the top of the list. Jeff Burton is on the Hall of Fame ballot right now.
He'll be in one day.
Greg Biffle is on the Hall of Fame ballot. Just think of that. And the crew chiefs and all the talented crew members back then, when they were building these fenders and doors and tails all by hand, and the English wheel and the craftsmanship. The early 2000s, yes, this place was phenomenal. And
yeah, sure. And now it's great to see things happening on the upswing, and what Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece and Brad Keselowski are doing now as they're carrying the torch on the track for RFK with a lot of great men and women there on the campus, making a lot of cars go very, very fast. Kurt, it's been amazing spending time with you here today on Backstretch Banter. Truly hope we get to do this again, and really looking forward to seeing everything that leads up to your Hall of Fame induction coming up in January.
Absolutely. No, it was a blast. It seems like an hour can go by in 5 seconds when you get to tell fun, cool stories and hang out with you guys, because you've been in the sport for so long. You drag even more of the answers out of me, so it's great. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, we may turn the microphones off here in a minute, Brad, but I'm sure I'm going to have a lengthy conversation with Kurt afterwards, because there's so much to cover.
Yeah, there is.
Off record or on record? What are you talking about?
He said mic's off, so you're okay there. But it'll be fun. Want to say a big thank you to Kurt Busch for joining us on this week's edition of Backstretch Banter. For Mike Massaro, my name is Brad Gillie. Appreciate you for tuning in.